Success Insight shares the stories of the people with passion and drive who make things happen in the world. Here's your host, Howard Fox.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Success Insight podcast. Our guest today is women's empowerment coach, Patricia Love. Patricia and I will be discussing how to harness the power of positive thinking to transform your life. Now, Patricia's story of trauma, death, and bad decisions forced her to flip her inner script from I can't into I can, or face alternative consequences. She found by interrupting and healing the negative behaviors that had sabotaged her that she had the ability to move forward in all areas of her life. Inspired by her own personal transformation into the Rah Rah Coach, Patricia has devoted the last 25 years to mentoring and coaching CEOs, entrepreneurs, and realtors, inspiring them to allow their souls to sing. Patricia Love, welcome to the Success Insight podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. It's a great opportunity, and it's just nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you as well. And we were sharing, and for our audience sake, Patricia lives in Seattle. I'm in Las Vegas, and you were just describing this wonderful, maybe not so wonderful rainfall that came down in Seattle. But
well, we don't like to tell everybody that. We actually tell people it rains more than it really does, except for today. Today was not just rain; it was catastrophic. I mean, literally, my car was like, I wonder if it was going to come out on the deep end or not.
Really? Your car could have suddenly become a boat. Who knew?
Well, yes, and I'm very familiar with those too, so I probably could have handled it quite well since I live on one.
Oh, that's really? Now, we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
But I have to ask you, first and foremost, there's a lot of famous people that have one name like Cher or, there's Liberace, Patricia Love. Now, that's a cool name, Patricia Love. How'd you get Love? Is that it? I mean, is that what you...
That's it. That's it. That's all there is. Okay, now we can go.
All right. So this, you could have been Patricia Love, the love coach.
Well, that's true. I could be many things. And actually, here's the interesting thing. Patricia Love is my maiden name. And interesting enough, my father, technically, he was a Mills. And because of his backstory, which was not a good story, and he didn't have a good father, his father, we won't get into that, but his father was not good. He ended up being in prison for many years. His last name was Mills. And so my dad actually took one of his stepfather's name, which happened to be Love. And if I'm being honest, to this day, since that was done, way back in the day, I wonder if it was even legally done, to be honest, because you just really never know. So that's how I got the name. I loved having the name Patricia Love. I've been married twice, but I never changed it, even in the days where a lot of people did. I really liked the name, and it took. It's hard to forget.
Yeah, when your publicist contacted me and said the name, I'm like, I've got to interview her. I love that name. And it's funny, my last name being Fox, I had love-hate relationships with it, love-hate relationships with Howard.
Yeah.
Now that I am what I am, my age, I actually love it. My logo for my coaching business with the Fox, it looks like, a man that's got his hands up, or a person with their hands up. So, I'm like totally embracing Fox.
It's an amazing, what we embrace later on in life, honestly, because back in the day when I was, going to school, the last name Love, when you're much younger, was not the best name to have.
No.
So there was some bullying and different things. And so, you just had to get through that like a lot of people. And of course, I changed my name from Patty to Patricia, because I thought it sounded so much more adult when I turned like 21, 22.
Yeah, at some point in life, we have to start adulting. And so, no, I just think it's wonderful.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it. And trust me, a lot of nicknames have come up.
We could have a whole podcast on nicknames. Trust me on that one.
I know, right?
So, Patricia, I would love if you could share with our audience a little bit of your backstory. Now, I kind of implied a little bit here in one of the paragraphs I just read. I'm sure there's more to it, but if you could just kind of encapsulate your journey to, now you're the Rah Rah Coach. And I mean, you and I are fellow coaches.
Yeah.
Our goal is to inspire our clients to go above and beyond to places they never thought possible.
Right.
And so, yeah.
How did I get here?
How did I get there? How'd you get here?
It's interesting. You know how our journeys go, right? First off, I got the nickname Rah Rah because I've always been very motivational and try to motivate people. Even in my younger years, when things were tough, I always would try to motivate. And people would all started calling me the cheerleader, several years ago. And pretty soon, and then it was like, well, I'm not really a cheerleader. I'm more life's cheerleader more than anything. But that became such a long name that people just shortened it to Rah Rah, because I'd always be going, yay, Rah Rah, let's go. And so people would just kind of shorten it to Rah Rah. So now I can go into a room and sometimes I'll hear this like, hey, Rah Rah, like if I'm going into a diner or something like that. But really how it started is I grew up, and I have to say, my father was just a non-nurturing or emotionally unavailable. And again, it would have to go back to his, background. And I actually am writing a book, and I'm actually in that chapter right now about him, which is kind of interesting. But, because people show their love the way they know how. And he didn't have any love growing up. And so he ended up leaving home at 15 or 16 years of age. But so he was not, he was unemotionally available, and he was always traveling. Well, then my mother was an alcoholic. So those two things combined, and being the youngest of three kids, when I say youngest, it was like 8 to 10 years between my other ones. So I basically was growing up by myself alone. And some people might say, well, this is so great. It's lucky that your parents leave you alone. No, it's not a good thing when you basically are just left alone to kind of figure out your own thing. Now, of course, I was roof over my head and food on the table. But anything beyond that, where there was no inspiration, there was no nurturing, it was just like I was just there. And back in the day, I was young, blonde, and it was kind of the day when parents would say to you, you should be seen and not heard. So there was a part of me when it's like you start learning at a very young age. And this was about 3 years old. That was the first time I heard that. And it's like it stuck with me.
It always sticks when you're a little kid and your parents say something.
Yes, it sticks.
Could have been a joke, but it sticks.
Yeah, it sticks. And it went on and on like this for years. And what ended up happening is that because there was no nurturing and there was no direction, no discipline, no anything, I got to the point where I really started making bad decisions in life because I didn't have the direction. They gave me good morals. So overall, at least I was doing the right things, but I started getting into drugs. I started getting into men. I started getting into all the places that I shouldn't be getting because you're always searching for something, right? And because of that, there ended up being a couple of rapes. I was raped by gunpoint one time and then one by a boyfriend and abused. So I just started getting into very abusive relationships and not understanding. But what really kind of helped me through a lot of this and moving forward, even though I was going through all of this and the stuff, was that my dad was a salesperson, as I said, and he had all of these books downstairs. And I would constantly go down because I was one of those people, like most young girls and little girls, you want your daddy to love you. You want to be just like them because you idolize them. No matter how mean they are to you or what the situation is, you still want them to love you. So he had these books from Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, Dale Carnegie. He had all of these books. And one of these books was Napoleon Hill was laying on his desk one time when he was traveling. And I'd be going down there all the time and I would pick it up. And to me, I wanted to learn to be just like him. So if he was reading this, then I should read it too. So I started reading these books and not really understanding them as much, but something sink in. And so I became more motivational, but I also became a little bit of an imposter, you might say, because I was becoming somebody that wasn't really me. I was becoming what my dad, that I could make my dad love me type of person. So I learned how early on to negotiate my allowance, negotiate everything because he seemed to love all of that. But, the background continues on. And even though I was motivational and inspired others, there was a part of me that I didn't know how to inspire my own self, my internal self.
Impostor syndrome. I remember going into, not so much in my IT day. So I'm a recovering IT business consultant. Talk about being in a profession that I should never have been in. There was aspects of it that I enjoyed, but not really a good fit. And But when I went into coaching, I remember sitting around this huge circle in our initial meeting. It was up at Fielding Graduate University. It's in Santa Barbara. But it showed up on my Facebook timeline, your 10-year anniversary from when we graduated. It's like, wow, I digress. But I remember sitting around the circle and thinking, what am I doing here? What do I have to offer? And I think this imposter syndrome, we all, depending on who we are, our upbringing, our mentoring, the coaching we have, that's a very recurring belief.
It's more common than people realize. That's why we get into our 40s and our 50s and we go, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah.
That's not what I love doing. Because it's funny because I got into sales. Well, first of all, I flunked out of college, so I didn't have a degree at all. Mm-hmm. And again, I was taught to just be pretty and everything else is just fall into place. That's all great and good, but, it doesn't help you when you actually have to do something and actually bring forth math or whatever, which I didn't know anything about. So the interesting thing is that I got into sales because he did.
Right.
And I became good at it only because it became a habit and out of survivorship. But that's not ever where my heart lied. And I was a real estate agent, and I'm still technically a realtor. I have a license for 30 years. And yet I never really loved sales. I was never the one that was going to go out knocking on any doors. That just wasn't, So I had to, I was really smart or street smart. So I'd learn how to do that. But I truly would be an imposter and come home and go, what am I doing? I don't like this, But then I got stuck in it.
Yeah. What was that aha moment? Because I can remember my story. It was part of my Toastmasters icebreaker speech. What was that aha moment for you when it's like, I've got to figure out what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Oh,
that's easy. That was like 2009. It wasn't all that long ago.
Well, to be frankly honest with you, that I was in, it was like 10, 15 years ago.
Exactly. I mean, and literally, Howard, I was, and here's the interesting part is that people on the outside would have thought I had everything.
Of course.
Everybody thought, she got the money, she's got the car, she can get the guy she wants, she can, everything. And yet I was unhappy. But what happened was that everything kind of piled in and came to a head, as you said, which created the aha moment. And what that was I was on the floor in actually September of 2009, and the recession had hit. So money wasn't coming in the way it normally was. And I was really good at spending money, by the way. I was really good at making money, but really good at spending it also. And then my second husband, things fell apart there. My mother died. And then I found out he was having affairs, and I was actually giving him money to have these affairs, and not knowingly, And so one night I was basically drunk on the floor because I was having martinis and drinking too much and everything else. And I was even doing at the time a couple drugs that I probably shouldn't have done. And the only good thing is I don't have a habit, a type of a habitual problem.
Right.
At least in those areas. But I found myself, and get this is going to sound crazy, and a lot of people think I'm a little nuts, and I'm not into necessarily woo-woo. I am into the universe, but I do believe in something.
Right.
And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, this was my aha moment. I felt this little thing on my hand, and I looked up, and there was my 12-year-old cat. Okay. She had put her paw on my hand, and she was looking at me, and I swear to God, she was talking to me. And all of a sudden, this energy came through me, and these 5 words actually came to me. Because I heard her say, don't give up. You got to keep going. You're supposed to be doing something. You have a purpose. You have a reason. You got to help people.
Wow.
And that's kind of my turning point. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take my power back. I've given my power to everybody else. I did what they wanted. I did what they wanted me to do in sales, or I thought they wanted me to do. Mm-hmm. I made up a lot of things too, because you make up things, right? And from then on, I started working, paying off debt, and taking control of my own life, which is the only person that could control it.
Right. Well, it's interesting when we start to take control of our own life, and therein lies, I think, the opportunity is we can start to see others who are struggling They've got the Impostor Syndrome. What's that song? The Tears of a Clown.
Oh yes, I remember that song.
Yeah. One of the handful of songs that I hate because they remind me of stuff.
All songs remind us of stuff.
Yes. So you have this moment, and it's interesting, by the way, you got to check out our podcast with Jim Phillips. It's got a very interesting story, very similar to the cat on your hand. So you got to go listen to that. But I love the aha moment. So now that you realize, okay, I need to take control of my life, how did, Patricia Love 2.0, maybe it's 3.0, I don't know yet.
Yeah, I know, right? It's still coming. It could be 4.0.
Yeah, I'm like 2.1 right now.
I know, right?
But how did that start to evolve, and how did you begin to, well, if I can change, I can begin to help other people change?
Yes. Well, interesting though, I always was helping others.
Right.
Because I was mentoring the real estate agents back in the day to be better at sales. Because I didn't do it in a way of a numbers game. It was more of, you got to believe in yourself. But the problem is I was telling everybody else to believe in themselves, but I forgot to tell myself. You
forgot to drink your Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I forgot to drink my own Kool-Aid, but I was really good at telling other people, what to do and how to do it and making them succeed. And so when I had this aha moment, it was more of taking my power back from people. Because I was sabotaging myself. I was constantly sabotaging myself. I would make a lot of money and then I would spend it all. And I get to the point where, like, why are you doing that? Or I would get into a relationship, and then I'd sabotage it. And you wonder why, because it always takes more than one person to mess things up, typically. And so I was constantly sabotaging my life. And so when that aha moment came around and those 5 words came up, which, by the way, are these, and I'm going to tell you what they are, because they're acknowledgement, forgiveness, mindset, accountability, and perseverance. And I had a bonus one that I always call gratitude. But those 5 words, when that whole energy came up when the cat was talking to me, I wrote those 5 words down. And I believe it, because my sister passed away many years ago, and I still believe that she was the one telling me these 5 words. So I took notice. And I said, okay, somebody's time to tell me something, because I don't usually talk to my cat like this, or my cat doesn't usually talk to me back. And so I said, you're going to take notice of this. And so I started the very first word. I said, I got to acknowledge my own truths and my own negatives, my own behaviors. And this is one of the problems with most people, is that they don't want to acknowledge their own crap, basically. Okay. Because it's too hurtful. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had to acknowledge the fact that, I wasn't good in relationships. I was not good with money. I could make it, but I didn't know how to keep it. I was judging people. And so I had to really come to myself and say, you got some work to do, girl. And once I started to acknowledge the faults and bringing them to the truths and writing them down, that's when I could start to fix them. I could start paying off the bills, because I wasn't even opening them up. Mm. So, I could start, I was just acknowledging. Then I had to work on the forgiveness. I had to forgive my mom for being an alcoholic. I had to forgive my dad for never being there. I had to forgive even the rapists. I had to get to the point where I had to forgive them, because they were taking power from me, because they knew not what they did, but I could control myself.
Right.
And then once I got into those 2, especially, then I could really work on my mindset. But I was always working on my mindset, but never fixing the acknowledgement or the behaviors that were causing my problems. So once I was able to do that, then things started to flow into the mindset. And then it becomes a lot easier to grow and to hold yourself accountable and to keep persevering. And I still do these things every day. I mean, these 5 words I actually use every day. Like, okay, what do I need to acknowledge today? And I had to also realize that I was human. We make mistakes, right?
Right.
We got to forgive ourselves also. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's kind of how it started. And I continue that. And since I did that, everything started flowing so much better, because I wasn't that imposter anymore. I wasn't hiding from myself.
Right. How did the this transformation further evolve into, again, you were always helping others, teaching them how to sell,
right,
coaching. How did that then become part of this, again, this Patricia Love 2.0?
It just kind of evolved. I took it to the next level. Instead of just, mentoring real estate agents and how to get better sales, I wanted to start mentoring them not only on better sales, but how to have a better mindset and how you get there. And that was a lot of times they were sabotaging themselves in sales and in life and themselves. So I started utilizing my 5 words with them to see, okay, if this is working for me, then it's got to work for them. And I started doing that.
So when a client comes to you, however they come to you, their referrals, their marketing, advertising, whatever.
Right.
What are they sharing with you that identifies that, yes, I understand and I can support you in this journey to reclaim yourself?
Right. A lot of it is a lot of people, especially women, because I primarily work with women. And the main thing is they don't feel adequate. They don't feel good enough. They don't feel worthy.
Why is that?
Because somewhere, just like myself, back in the day, they were told either to be seen and not heard, or they were told that they can't do something. They're told and that they were stupid, that they're never going to be as good as their brother. They're never going to be. And so it can be the littlest things that they add up. It can be kids in school. I was bullied in school. It can be bullying us in school. It's the media. It's everything. Media and growing up with a woman especially, and this is also happens with boys too and men. But primarily with women, we're brought up with the images, and the image problem is huge.
Very much.
I'm too fat and I can't do this because and so they're comparing themselves all the time, and they just feel like I'm not good enough. Well, that good enough stems from something.
Right.
And typically it starts. Now things add up on it, like through social media and the new stuff. Mm-hmm. But once you learn where it's coming from the beginning, then you can start to work through it, because then you become aware.
Right.
And when you become aware, then of course that's when you can start changing things. And I always encourage people to never believe that they're going to change overnight, because people are like, well, if I just do this, I'll be all good in a month. No, it doesn't happen quite that way. It's a process.
Right.
And understanding, just take baby steps one day at a time. I use words as I'm really big on words, because I believe words are killers. Mm-hmm. In so many ways, because in my instance, it was words that hurt me. I was also beaten up and thrown into a hospital, but I have to tell you, as hard and as terrible as that is, my bones healed. Your mind doesn't heal as easily.
No.
So it's one of those things. And so so I always find that always starts with most people. That somewhere down the line, some little thing was said, and we have to work through that.
And I would imagine each one of your clients is on their own unique journey. Some depending on how they are wired, it's like, I get it, I got it, I'm good. Some, it's the journey.
Some think they can fix themselves in about 5 minutes.
Right.
But usually it comes from a question like, I can't seem to ever get promoted. I can't seem to do well in relationships. I don't know why I sabotage it, and then I end up with a guy that's cheating on me. So there's always something that they bring to that, which actually just tells me that there's some healing, some negative healing behaviors that we've created back in the day that continued on, and we haven't broken those and turned them into a more positive behavior. It's kind of like the I can'ts into I can'ts. I simplify it,
right?
In reality.
Now, as a coach, what other modalities within coaching kind of inform the work that you're doing now with your clients? What other theories, coach training?
Oh gosh, well. it's life.
The school of life.
That's
Yes, I got that.
School of Life is honestly a big one. And I'm an NLP, which is behavior, watching people's behaviors.
Oh, yeah. That's a rough one for me, by the way, NLP.
Is it?
I'm very much a left brain person.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you learn behaviors of people. And I found that I've always found the brain interesting, first off. So I take psychology classes. I'm constantly taking classes, whether it's NLP or tapping or anything that increases my learning capabilities of understanding how the mind actually works without being a psychologist. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have to say I'm a student. I'm a constant student of anything I can grab onto.
Sure.
And again, that's many classes, coaching classes, and just more understanding the brain and understanding why people do what they do. And it can even be listening classes.
Mm-hmm.
I take classes like on listening, how to be a better listener.
Mm-hmm.
All of that works for me because I believe that you need to understand your client and never judge anything and see, because our stories may be similar, but different.
Right.
And to them, it's their story and it's very important. And so, I don't want to lead something into something that really isn't true.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really learning and understanding that being a good coach, I believe, is learning to really listen well.
Right. I totally agree there.
Yeah.
In your program, now you've talked about the 5 words and the bonus word.
Yeah.
With the work that you do, whether it's with individuals or teams, is there a process or that you go through with them, like 3-step process, 2-step process?
Well, actually, it's a 5-step process. And depending on what it is. And honestly, it is. I primarily, my whole program focus is I work with one-on-one. I'm not a big group.
Right.
I find one-on-one, I enjoy it. And people they change faster.
Right.
And they're willing to work harder at things because they come to me because they have a situation where they just, I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I need to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really is, and I call it my 5 diamonds. And
mm-hmm.
and it's because I believe that every single one of us is a diamond in the rough. And we're just waiting to show our brilliance and to shine. My whole program is basically the unstoppable 5 diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
And I start with that and I tell people we're going to go through a process and when I work with this process and I work with the acknowledgement, because if you don't acknowledge your fault, then we have nowhere to go.
Right.
So because you've got to acknowledge where you're at. Otherwise you can't, it's not going to change. And so, and then that's the hardest part is acknowledging and my forgiveness points and sometimes I have to work with people on the acknowledgement for several weeks. And then you move on because you can't have one without the other. You got to acknowledge, then you've got to forgive. And that forgiveness is also very big, in which a lot of times you have to work through because it's not easy to forgive a rapist. It's not easy to forgive a father.
No.
And so a lot of people will say, or somebody that got murdered. But you hear all the time, and I have a very good friend of mine that she went to the prison to forgive the person who murdered her grandmother. And it's because if you don't, it's not like you're forgetting, you're just forgiving them for now, because you got to take that energy that they don't even know they have.
They have no idea. They're draining it from you.
They're draining it every single day.
Right.
And it's amazing when I find that when people start to acknowledge and then they forgive, it's like these bricks just comes right off of their shoulders. And then where the mindset starts to open up, it opens up more, because now you can really think about how now can I change my mindset? How can I even be more positive? How can I really turn those can'ts into cans? Because you've gotten through those acknowledgments of behaviors, and now you can move forward. Right. So it's a process, and it can take some people. It's at least 3 months. That's a minimum. I like to give people a minimum of 3 months, and it usually takes more like 6.
I would love if you could share an example of an activity that you encourage your clients to do, like on a daily basis. You talked about it, the 5 words.
Yeah, well, Well, a lot of it begins with words, because a lot of it becomes, well, here's a couple of different things. There's a couple of things I ask them to do. The first thing I want them to do is stop and listen. And then you can take action. But I want you to actually stop and listen. And they say, well, what do you mean by that? I say, I want you to stop doing whatever you're doing. I want you to shut off the social media. I want you to clear your mind. I don't care if it's for 5 minutes or 5 seconds. I want you to stop and listen to yourself. Oh, that's really hard. Just 5 seconds. So it's an exercise I get these people to do, my clients to do, because it's so important. Because what's happening in today's world is that there's so much chaos and there's so much media and there's so much negativity that you're bombarded all over the place. And you've got to sit quietly. And people go, well, I don't want to meditate. I can't meditate. Like, I'm not asking you to meditate. I'm asking you to just be quiet. I actually don't like to push meditation. I always say, use this as quietation. Go to the bathroom for 5 minutes. And pretty soon you're going to want to take 10 minutes. So I give them really small baby goals, and they start to like it. Like, wow, I kind of liked it. The first, and I try to tell them so that they understand what's going to happen. Like, for instance, I'll say, okay, you're going to go into the bathroom for 5 minutes, and you're going to be sitting there going, oh, la, 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 okay, what am I doing here? You're anxious, your mind's going crazy. And I said, that's normal. Just work with it. Then try it again. And then try it again. And pretty soon they're like, wow, I get this. I really like it. So that's one of the things I really tell people to do.
That's fantastic. It's funny. Like, I love the quiet of the morning, and I get up and I do have my coffee with me. That's an important.
Me too.
Yeah. I open the door. I face east, and then it's usually just before sunrise. I can see Venus up in the sky. There's the sun. It's just starting to get light out. Have the coffee. Hopefully, I don't have my cell phone with me, because I just like to look outside. And there's a breeze coming in, even in Vegas. I got the ceiling fan going, but it's just something about that. It's just
it's grounding. Yeah. You're grounding yourself. Yeah. And when you can ground yourself, even for 5 minutes with nothing around and seeing nature, that's grounding yourself. Right. And the more you can do that, and the more you start to focus, the more you have clarity, the more that it's amazing how you started being more intuitive and listening to what I call the soul versus our head. Right. Because the head has got all this activity and all these habits that we've gained over the years, right, of just habits. When in really, how many times have you gone against your intuition and gone with your head? It wasn't always right. But when we went with our soul and listened to that, it's like, wow, I need to do that more often. So it's tuning into your soul.
There was someone wrote, I don't know if it was in LinkedIn recently, and it's like, it's not even worth getting into this. Yeah. I believe, we've got our head, the heart, for me, the stomach. When I'm doing something or I'm about to do something, make a decision, spend money, and my stomach is churning, that's my indicator of walk away as quickly as possible.
Stop. That's stop.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And there was someone, again, I remember where they were, but they're a coach. Well, there's no such thing as your gut feeling. And it's like,
oh my,
that's what that wasn't what I said.
No, that's not true.
That wasn't what I said. Oh my, it was something else. But
I'm being nice.
We are being nice. But I think that's good. We have to do that. And I am curious.
The gut is so important. We need to listen to that. And there's a wonderful book, if you've never, and I think I forgot the author, but it's called The Seat of the Soul.
The Seat of the Soul?
And the SEAT, Seat of the Soul, and it's Zurkay, Zukay, I believe, is his last name. And it talks about your intuition. It talks about the soul. Because people use different verbiage. It can be gut, can be instinct, can be soul, can be whatever. And there is no good or bad. But it's the head that gets completely in the way of most of all of our lives.
Right.
And so, it's a really great book for your listeners or whatever, they ever want to listen to something and really start to intune themselves. I got the audio. I like it better because I can really sink into it.
Well, very good. What we'll do is we'll go out to Amazon, find the book, and put a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's a great book. Great book. But you were also asking me about a couple activities, and I wanted to bring this one activity up that I try to get people to do, because the biggest problem I find is that people feel very out of control. Mm-hmm. And like in this pandemic, just to bring it into what's going on here.
And that's perfect, Patricia, because I really wanted to talk a little bit about that. How can your work help inform change? So perfect segue.
Exactly. Okay, because anything in life, and especially right now, it's uncertainty. It's unsettling for people, and a lot of people do not understand how to handle that, because they know it's out of their control in a lot of ways. They can only do their part. I explain to people, my clients, you're the only one that has control. You have control of yourself and how you react to things. So I want you to do these couple of things, and it'll put you into more feeling of control. Besides gratitude, when you're in the pandemic, gratitude is always a good thing, because you appreciate what you do have. But there's this one word that I always use, and I tell people, use this in your vocabulary every single day, all the time, whenever you're doing things. And the simple word is choose. I choose to not eat that candy. I choose to be positive today. I choose to go work out today. I choose to go to work today. When you use that word and you put that in your vocabulary, instead of saying, I got to go to work today. Oh, I better not eat that because I'll get fat. Or I choose not to go to that party. Or here's another one. I choose not to drink at the party. And when you say that to people, they have a tendency to say, oh, okay. Because otherwise they try to tell you, oh, come on, just have one. No, I choose not to. It puts you in control. And what the biggest problem of this world right now is, people are feeling out of control. And it's a simple word, and it's a powerful word. Even when I say it out loud, I feel the control. I'm choosing.
Right.
And it's so simple, but yet when I started using that, it really started changing my life.
No, I love it. And I think that's the perfect, for us on the show and for our listeners, what we call our insight to go. Because we always want to leave. I'm
choosing to go now.
I'm choosing to go. And I think it's wonderful. And I think it's, some of the best coaching in my mind is just very simple. I mean, I've got friends, colleagues, they collect assessments like they collect, refrigerator magnets.
Yeah.
And, but some of the best coaching is just very simple, having a conversation.
Honestly, Howard, I like to keep it as simple as possible, because everything else in the world is so crazy and so complex.
Right.
Let's try to keep ourselves as simple as possible.
Perfect. Well, this has been a phenomenal conversation, and I've really enjoyed it. I want to have just a little bit of fun with you for just a second.
Uh-oh.
I'm sure you're okay with fun. You live on the boat. How did that come about? By the way, what's the name of the boat?
Well, it's called Rum Me Over. I don't like rum, so I'm changing it to Tollipop.
Tollipop.
Because it's a more fun name. I live on a Tollycraft boat. If anybody's a boater at all, a Tollycraft has been around for many, many years. And how this all came about is, I grew up on boats, so I'm very familiar with boats. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, which boating is very big here. Yeah. So I know about boats, how to handle boats. And I said to myself, a few years back, I said, I sold my condo. And people have to understand, I'm a little out of the box anyway. But because I went through all this debt and all these different things, and even I wanted to also learn and understand, when I went into an apartment, my rent kept going up. Right. And I didn't like that.
Right.
And so I said, I don't like that. And I'm on a new path. So I said, you know what? I've always thought it'd be kind of fun to live on a boat. And here's just a 20-second background. I also could see myself living in a spaceship too, just FYI, or anything odd, a container home. I just kind of like that kind of stuff. So I said, you know what? I'm going to find an inexpensive boat. I'm going to gut it. I'm going to call on all my carpenter friends and my friends that help me out here, and I'll give them beer and whatever else I need to give them or whatever. And they created this great little tiny house, you might say, or condo on the water.
I love that. Condo on the water.
It's a 38-foot Tollycraft with a 12-foot beam. I'm sitting here looking at the water. I'm looking at sailboats all around me. And I live in a community with other people that live on board, but not everybody is a live aboard. But it's fun, it's humbling, and it keeps me in a very grateful perspective. Yet I live on a boat and I have a view of the water.
Yeah.
I just saw an incredible rainbow right before the show. It was beautiful. So I consider myself extremely lucky, and I just wonder what my next chapter, my next thing I'm going to do.
Wow. My favorite part of living in Chicago, where I had been, was I was near the water. And one of my favorite parts of the day, I love the quiet of the morning. Having a cup of coffee, nobody's around, the birds, this and that. The next most important sound that I embrace is the train whistle. I love the train. And I miss that because there are no trains.
I have one of those here. I got a train that goes by like once a day, so it's pretty cool.
And I love that sound because it reminds me of growing up late at night. Number 3 is the sound of the rigging on the mast. So a cup of coffee out on the bow, sitting down, feet up on the cushions, cup of coffee in your hand. I mean, what a way to start the day or end it. It's
a great way to start a day. I actually go up on top and have coffee sometimes and listen while I'm drinking my coffee and listening to the rigs, especially if there's a little wind. Like yesterday we had 30 mile an hour winds and you could hear them, but it's all good.
I love it.
For me, the sea is where I go to breathe. The rolling, I'm on the sound, but the sea is where I breathe.
Fantastic. Well, I have a request for you now. We have a copy of your headshot that we'll put in our banners. But what I would love for our show notes on our main page, successinsightpodcast.com, is a couple pictures in and around the boat.
Sure.
Want to see the boat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a problem.
I think that'd be so cool for our show notes.
Yeah, no problem. I might have to clean up. No.
Well, just, shots that you've already taken. I mean, just outside on the boat.
I got a couple of those.
I'm sure you'll find those.
I got a couple of those, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Patricia, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where are the best places for them to go?
It's pretty simple. First off, it's patricialove.com. It's my website. And you can go to Instagram, Patricia Love Blogs, or again, the Rah Rah Coach, Patricia Love on Facebook. It's pretty simple. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I'm an open book, so I love to talk to people.
Excellent. Well, we will most definitely provide the backlinks to the website, patricialove.com, your Facebook, the Rah Rah Coach, Instagram, Patricia Loves Blogs, and of course, the Rah Rah Coach on Twitter. So, Patricia, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our podcast. Great conversation. Certainly, it's nice to have a conversation with a fellow coach. And, journeys that, that rings a little bell for me. And
journeys are, we're all on a journey.
We're all on a journey. And
it's just what station are you at?
Yeah. And what choices do we want to make? So.
Exactly. No, it was an honor. I really appreciate it.
All right. Fantastic. Okay, folks, we've just been chatting with your women's empowerment coach, Patricia Love, and we've been talking about harnessing the power of positive thinking to transform your life. And Patricia has left us with really some wonderful nuggets. Her 5-step program, we've got acknowledgement, forgiveness, mindset, accountability, perseverance, and that bonus of gratitude. And also this insight to go of starting your day, doing whatever you're doing, make it a choice. I choose to, and you get to fill in the blanks. And if you are inclined, do go out to Patricia's website or Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you prefer from a social side, and to learn more about her and her work. And she would love to get to know you. In the meantime, you can visit us on successinsightpodcast.com. Once this episode is published, do let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you or any other episode on our podcast. We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn. We've got Success Insight podcast pages, and you can also find us on YouTube, as well as the major podcast platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, and Apple Podcast. So folks, go out there, have a phenomenal day. It's Friday. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your family. Wear your mask. Practice social distancing, and I'm going to add a new one, get out there and vote. Too much is at stake this year. We have to get out and vote. So please do that. Until then, we'll see you on the next episode of the Success Insight Podcast. Take care now.
Success Insight is a production of Fox Coaching and First Story Strategies. Find us online, successinsightpodcast.com.